So, good afternoon, welcome to my second test stream, which we don't call it a test. How was the volume levels? I've done something very slightly different today. What I've done is, this is going out on Twitch, but then it will be uploaded to YouTube. This is to save the CPU usage. It really did struggle yesterday. So let me just refocus. So there we go. So this is what we did yesterday with our forest troll. So I'm trying to rush into it. Music a bit loud. Right, what I've done for the music, I've found some copyright-free music. So hopefully we shouldn't then get in trouble with YouTube. How does that sound? So obviously we're just finding the levels. Right. So this is where we're up to with the troll yesterday. We've taken some rebirth woodland brown, as you can see there, possibly not. The light is very bright. There we go, some woodland brown, which we've diluted with a little bit of brown wash, and then we've watered that down. Then we've applied a wash all over of the woodland. Oh, fantastic! Congratulations to Rainer72 and Lou. Is that going to be their first baby, or are they having more baby? Oh, sorry, is that one of a pack? Right, let me just, sorry, I'm gonna... Whoops, so I've accidentally paused the music. And now I've accidentally muted it. Sorry, when it's kind of trying to get everything sorted out here. Oh, so bless them. So, wonderful. So, I wish them all the best with all of the sleepless nights and the stepping on the Lego bricks and all of the things that is going to come their way. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight in with the next layer. What we want to do is we did an all-over wash yesterday, but I want to do another wash now of a 50-50, just the brown wash, diluted about 50-50, and I'm going to put that roughly where the shadows will naturally fall. So it's due New Year's Eve, so they'll have a double celebration then at the end of the year. A new year, a new life. How absolutely fantastic. So, looking for my brush. You know me with brushes, I lose them. So, right, let's use this one. So, I'll put plenty of wash in. What I was doing yesterday was not putting enough in. Right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think I'd rather put way too much on than not enough. Now this colour, I don't know if you can see it too well. It's Axel took, yeah. Axel is the name of our cat. I had no hand in naming it whatsoever. So if you can see in the bottom left hand of the screen, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. My Twitch viewers just decided to name my cat Axel. I can only assume there's some kind of music reference with that. So, oh, and now my computer decided to do the scan. Always picks the wrong time to do the scans. So, what are you thinking of the music? Obviously, I'm limited in what I can do. Now, the big question of I've got to put the shade where the shadows naturally fall. So the big question of where do the shadows naturally fall? Well, the easy way, when I do highlights, I'll quite often look at the model from above, like I am the sun, and that's where I want to do the light. So all we do is we'll do the opposite. So we'll hold it so there'll be lots of shade in there, and it's basically if we were to hit it from a 45-degree angle, it's where it wouldn't fall. So we'll just pop in some shade there. This is going on a little bit thick at the moment. So there we go, under the arms, under the chins. And under anything that's going to be sticking out. So simple as that, really. And it's just going to create extra depth. So, I almost did underneath the wood there. Obviously not needed. So we'll put some under here. Even though I am going to be going over the mushrooms again, different colour. Then we can do selective shading if we want wherever. So just be careful that you're not going to catch somewhere like say this bit. I can't get at it from there, but I can get at it from there. But actually I'll do a little bit down the chest, just some of the deeper areas. So there we go, and that's all I've really done on that. And that's just going to add a little bit of subtle. Oh, there we go, some more bits that I've missed. Now, one thing I noticed yesterday, again, I'd never used this shade before. Oh, we need to get into his back there, don't we? I'll try and show you some of the bits that I've not done this time round. Right, so yesterday I said that you can't really tell about the shade until it's dried sometimes. If you look on the top of his hands, now that it's actually dry, it's really added a lot more depth. So there we go. Right, so I'm going to leave that. That might take a while. Hopefully that'll be dry by the end of the stream, especially with this warmth that we're having. So where's the weather? What's the weather like? I'm going to ask this every day, aren't I? What's the weather like where you are, guys? So right, just check the music. There we go. It's working, but it's a little bit slow. Right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to switch our attentions to something completely different, which is the base. And just like anything else, hello Valkyrie, how are we? So just like anything else, we need to prime that. Now there's two ways to prime it. Well, three ways if you count a brush on primer. We can either airbrush it or use a rattle can. But because of the constraints that I've got during my lunch breaks, I'm actually going to take this primer and I'm going to be brushing it on. And I'll try and keep the layers thin, because the thinner the layers, the quicker it's going to dry. And all I'm going to do is just go all over, and I'm just going grey. You could go black if you wanted to, but this should be fairly quick to dry anyway. Oh, we seem to have no music again. Still, to be perfectly honest with you, compared to the problems that I had yesterday, I'd rather have no music, because music is probably something I can fix rather than playing it through an actual browser window. I could perhaps play it a different way. So because I'm applying this with a brush, I will need a second coat. I just don't seem to be able to get good thick coverage that you get, say, with a rattle can with a brush. Right, a quick look at that. There we go, bit of music now. Sometimes I just have to put, if I minimise my browser, it doesn't seem to play YouTube so well. But we'll sort music out. You know, you go back 48 hours ago, I didn't think we were going to have music on YouTube. and you know, the way that we normally do the music on my stream, quite often, the way that I do the music normally, I didn't think I'd be able to do that because obviously YouTube are quite hot on copyright. So if we start playing the latest music, the majority of the stream will be muted, and if you can't hear the music, you won't be able to hear what I've got to say, and what's the point in streaming a quiet stream? So there we go, and I can see oh, it stopped again. I decided to go for an advert. There we go. There we go. Just a basic primer over the top, just so that the paint will stick to it. And so you see there, I've got an uneven, probably a bit easier to see now, just a roughly uneven surface there. Just got the place to place the troll. I just don't want a predictably flat earth. You know, if anyone knows of any wild woodland that looks like it's been rolled flat, then you know, send me a picture and that'll open up the possibility for me doing absolutely flat woodland. That's fine then. So we'll give that a couple of minutes. Primer tends to dry quite quickly, to at least the usable state. This is drying, but it's not dry yet. I'm anticipating that's not going to be any good for at least 10 minutes. That is the problem with washers. This is why we want to try and find other areas that we can paint while other bits are drying. So hopefully it will be dry by the time I finish this, but I have a backup plan, so that's fine. So I meant to get some cheap brown paint. Normally I would use some kind of craft paint, but I don't seem to have any to hand. So what I'm going to do, I'm just grabbing any brown. It doesn't, in fact, actually I've got a nice colour to use. Let's see, I'm just thinking, there we go, right. I quite like this colour. It's called Cavalry Brown, but it's a little bit too red for what I want. So I'm going to try a little bit of an experiment. When I paint this soil, it's the majority, 99% of it won't be seen, so it actually doesn't matter. I could just go out and use a normal brown. So let's take this chance to experiment, and then what I think I'll do is I'll do 3 parts chocolate brown with 1 part cavalry brown, and hopefully that'll give me a nice clayey soil. So let's see how it comes out. So I've gone 3 drops cavalry brown and 9 drops chocolate brown. 6. Now this Vallejo, it's not coming out in nice drops like a bottle of water would, so it's not really an exact science. It's not a problem. Now for water, I'm just going to go straight water on this, because there's no point using up my nice, what I call my magic water, and I'm going to dilute that about 2 parts water. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Sorry, when I said 2 parts water, I meant 2 parts liquid. And finish that off with 2 drops of flow improver and 1 drop of retarder. Now the reason I use retarder is quite simply because I don't have any now. Why do I not have any now? There we go. Right. Now, I was given a recipe for paint water, which I now call magic water. And it does contain, it's basically, it's water, and it's got some flow improver and it's got some retarder medium in it. And it works really well. So I'm kind of roughly using the same formula. Now that I quite like, maybe a little bit too ready, so maybe I should have gone 1 part cavalry brown, 4 or 5 parts chocolate brown, but on the whole I think that's quite usable. So we should probably end up needing a second coat anyway, and I've made quite a lot there. Yeah, that's going to need another coat. That's way too thin really, isn't it, for what we need? But that's okay. Actually, what I'll do for a second coat, I'll just use the same water and I'll just chuck in some more chocolate brown. This is what I like about this. There's a lot of room to experiment and put things right if it goes wrong. So there's a chance to learn how paint and water works. I did want to thin it because I want it to go into the recesses. It's very hard to paint thick water into recesses. So there we go. And I'm going to speed the process up of drying for that by just blasting it with an airbrush. Also, what I find with this water that I use, what I call magic water, it gives a really terrible first coat, but then the second coat just comes out and then you go, wow! And that's why we call it magic water. There's a streamer called Napster who gave me this. You'll find him on Twitch, and he gave me the recipe, and it's basically how he explained it to me. So I'm afraid there's going to be a bit of noise. We'll just do a little bit of cheating. If I had gotten a hairdryer, I could have used that. Oh, thank you for the follow, Big Rosa. I really appreciate that. But at least that's a thin coat, so we know we're preserving all the detail. I mean, like I say, we're going to be losing most of this detail anyway with the leaves that we're going to put on the top. I can't wait to do that actually, that'll be fun to show you that. So what I'm doing now is I've taken more chocolate brown and I'm adding the cavalry brown to the mix, but I'm using that pretty much as a thinning agent. So it's going to be thicker. Obviously I've gone a little bit too thick before, and that's actually the colour I was after. So that should be a lot better this time. Oh, there we go. Lot better coverage, pretty much the coverage I wanted in the first place. So we make mistakes, we learn. I mean, we got away with it a lot more because we used a grey primer, but if I'd have used a white or a black, it would have shown up a lot more. So there we go, that's the first good coat, and it's nice and thin to get it all in the texture. At the moment it's looking like wet mud, which actually isn't a bad thing. but once it dries, hopefully it should have looked just like mud. And I am just cleaning my brush, because obviously we don't want our paintbrushes, no matter how much we love or hate our paintbrushes from particular brands. This one is the Citadel. I do quite like their base brushes, and I'm looking to replace the shade brushes with my personal favourite brand is Rosemary & Co. So I am looking at getting more Rosemary & Co's. I have emailed them regarding different types of brushes, but you know, when you're discovering new brands, pretty much like the paints and everything else, you tend to find your favourite company will do something really good on one thing and something terrible on another. And I found that their dry brushes, what I use for dry brush, this is a hog hair brush. It's not the best dry brush I've used, but I have emailed them asking for some alternatives. So, but they've also given me some really nice alternatives for shading and glazing brushes, so I'll be giving those a try in the future. But saying that, I've just recently discovered watercolours for a basing brush, which I do like. I've mentioned it on my Twitch stream before. The only trouble I find with it is, even though this is sitting in my my paint rack, I can't find it sometimes because it's clear. So if it goes into my little paintbrush rack and it sits in front of, say, a black paintbrush, I can't. It looks black, so I can't spot it. That's the only drawback. So I might pop a little bit of masking tape on it. Maybe it's because my eyes are a bit older. So, and I'm just rushing this. Normally I would leave this to dry naturally, but A, it's a base, so it doesn't have to be as good. And secondly, it's the base, and secondly, it's because I've only got about an hour. I want to kind of push this along. The trouble I find with streaming for, say, a single hour is that the first bit of time, say the first 10-15 minutes, goes along at a nice reasonable pace, and it kind of tricks you into thinking, oh yeah, we've got loads of time. And then you'll look what feels like 10-15 minutes later, and now it's up to 1/4 the hour, and you're like, oh, where is the time all gone? So there you go. That's almost there. Nearly there. So we'll have a quick check on Mr. Troll, and his shade is almost dry. So he's roughly on schedule. Obviously we need to be checking on this chappy anyway, because we're just looking out for areas where it's pooling. And I think he's starting to look really nice actually. If you see with the areas where he's dried, sort of under his arms, you can see it's a lot darker. So we're creating that highlight with the shade. So I think by the time we've popped on one more shade of one more layer of base, I think he'll be just about ready. And then as we finish the next part of the troll, I think we can then go for a highlight on the base. So base brush, and I'll try and keep this one a bit thinner. So we don't have to worry too much about the drying time. So I have one interesting story for you today, not actually real life, but one that I found amusing. Someone was telling me about it. I don't know if it's a true story or not, but we were talking about parking. Now Newport, the drivers, they seem to have a total disregard for the parking rules, you know, parking on double yellow lines and things. We'd noticed that there was a car, and this happens quite a lot. Cars park on the path on a double yellow line. So they think that technically they're not parking on the double yellow lines. Whether that car is ticketable, I don't know. But we noticed that there was a couple of cars were parked, that the pathway wasn't actually big enough for a car to be parked there and leaving sufficient space for people to get past, which in my opinion is as bad as parking on a double yellow line. Someone was telling me apparently that happened last week. Someone in a big electric wheelchair thought there was enough gap, not a lot left over, but so they went through this gap that was left between, it was a wall and the car, and this lady in the wheelchair, she misjudged the space, and she scratched all down the side of the car, and she took the wing mirror off, and she got about halfway down the car, where the guy had actually come in at a slight angle rather than full on parallel with the curb. She got about halfway down the car and got stuck. So they had to call the fire brigade to get her out. And the only way they could get her out was for the fire brigade to bash all the side of the door in and bend all the panels inwards to create space for her to get out. And apparently this guy hasn't got a leg to stand on with his car because he shouldn't be blocking the path for disabled people. So, but you know, who would want to be the one to take a disabled lady to court over accidentally scratching your car, when you've not left enough room for her to get through? So, right, so final thin layer on that, and as far as the brown is concerned, I'm going to call that done. We don't need this to be a masterpiece, because like I say, we're going to be popping this over the top once we're done. And some nice little flowers. I say nice little flowers. Some nice little scenery. Right, so let's have a look at the troll. And there's still a few little areas that need drying, so I'll have a little look. What we're actually looking for, what we want to do now is we want to take that wash again, and without watering it down, and adding extra lines of darkness to the very deepest of recesses, such as between the line of the muscle down his spine. Here the brown wash is so dark it's almost black. So who dares text me at this time of day? Oh, it's my bank, very kindly telling me I've got what they consider not a lot of money. My bank does make me laugh. I've actually had a text off them before saying, oh, your bank balance is £99. As your balance is getting very low, please deposit money. And I'm thinking, I've got £99 in my bank account the night before payday. On whose planet is that not a lot of money? I know a lot of people that would love to have as much as £99 in their account the day before payday. I know a lot of people that would consider that as being very poor as well. Right, so we're looking for very, very dark recesses. So I would say the back qualifies, maybe the armpits, and underneath the back of the legs, but not going as far as we did on the last wash. And being very careful how we apply this, because we don't want a solid line between where we're washing and where we didn't wash. I'll tell you what, I've used so much of this. So, where's my shade brush gone? There we go. And you see my shade brush has had better days, but so we'll start off, we'll go in the middle, and then we'll just dot it coming out, so it's not a solid line. And if you can see where it's wet, I've just used the tips of my brush coming out. The same with the armpits. Just dot it. So we're actually going right in with some shade, but then we're just dotting as it comes out. Okay. So I'll put quite a lot under there. Obviously being so pop it in and then just bring it out a bit. Don't go crazy, we can always add a bit more. I'm going to actually put a little bit around his chest. There we go. You can always add a little bit more if it's not doing the effect that we want. Because remember, this is neat, so it's going to be very dark. There we go. You can actually see now on the leg it starts, as you move it around you see how it gets darker to lighter. Right, so all we can do now is wait for that to dry, and the next stage of that will be to dry brush the highlight colour. I recommend dry brushing because to glaze in highlights will not capture the incredible detailed texture. So we're actually oh, that's interesting, because we're going to be dry brushing. I would have thought that because we're adding lots of shade, we would actually be dry brushing the original base colour, but in actual fact we're not. Sorry, yeah, I thought we'd be dry brushing just woodland brown, because we started off with a woodland brown that was darkened with the shade. Then we've added more shade to make it darker and darker. So I would have thought my inclination would have been to dry brush with that. But no, we're actually going to be dry brushing with a mix, a 50-50 mix of those two. And to be honest with you, I'm going to be a little bit lazy, and I'm going to, once I've done it, I'm going to dry brush that with the woodland brown, and then maybe a touch of that. So that's not quite dry enough yet, and this obviously isn't dry because although it's drying rather quickly, it's not dry enough. So what I'm going to do is, I think I'll block in the actual wood, which is a piece there and a piece there, and I'll just pop the base on there. And the colour I'm going to use, it's a colour that I'm trying to come away from, but I do like the result, and that's Dryad Bark from Citadel. I just like, when I'm doing wood, I do like the Citadel set list for Dryad Bark. What happens is I will put in excuse me, I will put in the Dryad Bark, which is a very dark brown. Then I will add a shade which will not appear to do an awful lot. Then I'll put the first layer on, or a dry brush in the case of wood, and you start to think, oh, that's really good. And then you put in the final layer, and then you're like, oh, that's amazing. So it's one of those funny colours, really. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of Dryad Bark, and like I always say, I tend to overthin my paints, but I'm comfortable overthinning. It just means that I may have to do 3 layers rather than 2. So we'll see how this comes out. So, oh, that's actually not too bad. Now the big challenge I've got with this troll, I don't know if I actually mentioned it before, it's pretty much coming out in shades of brown. So I've got to make my highlights interesting, because if I don't make it interesting enough, I may as well just paint the whole lot one colour and then dry brush it, and then I'll have the whole lot done in 10 minutes, done, go home. But I really want people to know that his finger is a finger, and this bit of wood isn't part of him, it's something he's picked up. So that's my personal challenge for this project. So we have 3 main elements. We have him, 4 main elements, but just talking about the browns, we have a couple of bits of wood. Now this bit of wood seems to be sticking out of it, and I don't really know where that's come from, but that's something that we can add a story with. We can decide where that's come from. So by making the wood totally different brown from his skin, and then we have these mushrooms, and I keep going on about the mushrooms. The mushrooms really fascinate me. Do you know what? I think I've done this just right, rather than my usual overly thin. So we can see already we have something a bit different. So I think it's working. So we've got this bit of wood, we've got his skin, and we've got mushrooms. And then we can do his little loincloth, you know, help protect his modesty. So that's something that doesn't have to be brown. Maybe it could be brown, I don't know. So we've effectively, it's all going to be one colour, except for part of the base, which will have a bit of purple in there, which we'll get that from the basing materials, and obviously his cloth. This is quite difficult to paint because it is so textured. So it's quite easy to catch your bristles on a piece of texture, and then the bristles suddenly flick up, and then you've got dryad bark all over his fingers, which obviously we don't want. Am I keeping within camera okay? You guys know I have a bit of a problem that once I focus on the painting, I lose. It's actually not too bad. I can't always watch my monitor while I'm painting. And of course these are little bits that I'm saving for when I'm waiting for paint dry. If you go back maybe a year ago, I would be, okay, right, paint his skin, we'll wait for that to dry. We'll add some wash, we'll wait for that to dry. We'll add some more wash, we'll wait for that to dry. And I wouldn't actually have thought to doing this wood bit until more recently. Lovely, this colour. It's one of the few colours I probably won't ever get rid of. And of course, when you're mentally planning a figure, you're thinking about the colours that you want to use. But it's not till you actually get it down on the model that you actually get to see what it looks like in real life. So, and this is turning out about as well as I expected it to be. There may be some people who are looking at this and thinking, what the bloody hell is she doing? But it's all about you. people have said to me, do you like my model, my figure? And my response has been, do you like it? And they've gone, yeah, I do, I think it's my best work. And I go, well, there you go, then I like it. Do you think there's any areas you can improve on? Yeah, I'd like to have done that bit better. And I'll go, right, well, your next figure should be something that enables you to practice on that bit. And now obviously I didn't choose this particular model because this came from Asset Drop. Although I did choose to buy a monster. But one of the areas that I'm struggling with is flesh tones. I seem to be acceptable at darker flesh tones. Whoops. Nope, that's fine. I thought I got paint on his hand, but I didn't. So I have actually got a bit of a problem there. I need to just blend that wash out there. That's come out a little bit thick. So yeah, I personally feel that my flesh tones aren't perfect. My light flesh tones are really not very good. I don't mind saying that. I don't mind saying that to the whole world. My dark flesh tones are a lot better. And this is something in between. So rather than jumping from light to dark, I'm actually going something in between. So forgive me, there's a little bit of something on there that's bugging me. There we go. I think I've got a little bit of dirt that's just dropped on that. There we go, I'm happy now. So, now, when I said, I don't know if I did say it, but when I was doing the base, the base on his flesh, I said you don't really need to worry about if I accidentally got flesh tones onto the wood, because it's going to be painted over, it's really not a problem. Not sure what to do about those. They look like they might want a bit. I'm going to leave them anyway. So, there, even though I've used two colours the same, you know, a brown and a brown, now we've added more interest from that wood. So I'm now 10 times happier with this model than I was yesterday. And my viewpoint of that yesterday was, that's okay for the stage that I'm at, i.e. base paint and a wash. Now that I've applied that dryad bark, I'm like, but actually look at the detail on the wood. It just seems every time we apply anything, we just get more and more detail. I'm really loving this. So guys, if you like this model, I'll be honest with you, I don't think you can get it again. But this comes from Atlantis Miniatures, and to be honest with you, just the box. Alright, this box, it's pretty much useless once I've painted the model, but look at this, you've got magnets on the box. How cool is that? And and I've got some other little bits to play with. Oh, look at that. See, this is where I make mistakes. I should have primed that. This is a little tree stump, which I'm going to put about there. So, I still require a bit of work on my planning, but that's not a problem. We'll do him at a later stage. I don't know why I've called a piece of wood a him as opposed to a her or an inanimate object, but that's me for you. Right, so I'm not going to wash this yet. I'm going to do the dry brush next, because I anticipate with my dry brushing skills I will get some of the colour onto the wood, so I've left it between the first and the second stages. So and then I'll do the cloak. I'm not really sure how to do. The problem is this is something else for me to learn. So I'm going to take a short break and chat. When do I dry brush and when don't I dry brush? I suppose the basic answer is I could actually dry brush the entire miniature if I wanted to. Now there'll be a lot of pros out there going, no, never brush, never dry brush. But then there's pros out there that acknowledge there's times when to dry brush. I actually started my painting life dry brushing because I couldn't paint. And I was encouraged to do a Chaos Army. And dry brushing was a really nice, easy way to achieve a more than acceptable result without any skill. And the only drawback to that is that led me to become comfortable with dry brushing. So I'll always try to go back to dry brushing, and I'm trying to get myself back to painting everything. And there are times when dry brushing is the best method. So I'm now going to do this. And I think I'm going to try the woodland brown. But this is more an experimental piece more than anything. Because it's, like I say, it's all going to get covered up. So it doesn't matter if I go wrong. But see now, to do this piece of scenery, do you know what, I don't know why I'm using such a small brush. So, but honestly, truly, this is the best thing, the best method, words, right. Dry brushing is probably the best method to use for this. Yeah. And there must be some use in dry brushing, otherwise people wouldn't put so much money into making dry brushes, would they? So, to dry brush, in case there's anybody who's never dry brushed, all we do, as the name implies, we want the paint dry. So we get that onto our brush, and then we're just going to try and wipe as much off as we can. And it's all about subtle. I did a back to basics session with a friend yesterday, and we painted a gun barrel silver over black. And in actual fact, what I'd done, exactly as I intended, was that I really want to get that into the bristles. Not just on the ends, you see that's right in there. So what I'd actually done was the first pass I'd done with silver, it really wasn't strong enough. So I went in with another pass. I think I ended up doing about 3 passes. Now if I'd have done it all in one pass, it could quite easily have come out a sludgy mess. There we go, now that's coming out very subtle. Don't know if you can see that very well. So if we look at there, that's quite plain. If we see there's a very subtle, just picking up the edges. It's not a lot to it. It's very subtle. In fact, what I'll do is I'll deliberately leave the recess for his foot. And it should hopefully... Now I'll tell you what I used to do when I was younger. I think, well, that's not coming in strong enough, so I would start putting more paint. To be honest with you, that's worked on this occasion, but... Okay, so ignore what I say, sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about. So, I'm really going to build this up. Slowly. Slowly, slowly. Not too much brush on the paint. There we go. Can we see the detail just coming in now? Can we see how it differs from these recesses? So I'll give that one more pass. We'll build that up a bit more. And you see we've got the lower recesses just not picking up the paint. So it's adding a lot of depth. So now you can start to see what I can in terms of the peaks and the lower bits, so it becomes a lot more three-dimensional, 3D plus. So if any of these bits do show through, if I miss any bits with the scatter, that you're going to see realistic looking mud. In theory, I'm going to be covering it all up with that, but you know, there might be bits that I miss, or maybe after 6 months of playing a game with this figure every single day, you know, bits of scatter are inevitably going to be knocked off. Now, do you get to the point once you get bits starting to show through? Do you really need to fix it there and then, or you know, because the bottom bit has been done, it's like, well, that's okay. Actually, that looks nice. It looks a nice mix. Right, so I've actually not cleaned my brush for this because I'm just popping in an extreme high. Now again, it's really important that we don't go too much on this. I'm doing a much lighter dry brush than before. We're not even going to catch as many of the high reset, the raised areas as before. Very, very, very light. This is a very extreme. When you do layer painting, you'll go in with a lighter colour to catch all of the raised surfaces, but then you'll go in with an extreme highlight, and you'll tend to get like the edges of sharp bits, big sharp corners. It's pretty much what you're doing with this final dry brush. Now normally I would dry brush at an angle, but as this is a flat surface, there isn't anything that we're going to miss by doing that. We'll still get it all. If there was perhaps a brick wall in the middle, I would come in at an angle, and then if the brick wall was, say, there about this high, sorry, if there was a square, sorry, and it was about this high, I wouldn't do inside the square because obviously the light is blocking it. Because this is flat, there we go. So again, I'm just literally touching it, just very gently, and I'm just catching. There we go. So what do you think? And that's just using paint. Now obviously we could use specialist texture paints, but do we really need those? I'm just going to go around the edge as well. I am going to sort the edges out at a late stage, so I'm not worried about. Oh, hello. Hello, is it Zian Funkel? How are you doing? Did you have a good stream? There we go. And I've also deliberately left this bit. I haven't gone in really deep because I want to see where it is when I've left that gap for his feet to go in, and it's going to, obviously without the corks, this is how I've designed it to sit on the model. So I'm happy with this so far. Now I'm not really going to have any time to sort any more out, unfortunately. A tip that I always use with dry brushing, because your brush is you pretty much put dry paint on there, so it tends to be a lot harder to clean. So whereas I normally would clean my brushes, sorry, with water, and 9 times out of 10 that's sufficient. When I'm dry brushing, I do use an airbrush cleaner, and you'll see what I mean. I have just cleaned this with water, but if I now put, can you see that that's really, it wasn't clean.
We can't make you a teenager again. But we can.
Oh, have we got an advert? Come on, YouTube. Because this doesn't sound like a nice subtle song, is it?
Racing, but it will target
Right,
the
so
engine.
look at that, that's a lot better.
An expert.
So airbrush clean, that's my personal tip. And also that's going to dry a little bit better. If you're dry brushing one colour, you clean your brush and then you dry brush another, and you haven't got those bristles really dry, it's not really going to work. And airbrush, in fact, that's going to need a good deep clean actually. But if you with airbrush cleaner, it's going to dry a lot quicker as well, because it's more alcohol based. So guys, look, normally I said I was going to finish at 1 o'clock. It's now 5 to 1. I really don't think I'm going to be able to do much more in 5 minutes. So if you don't mind, I'm going to stop there. I think we've achieved quite a good result today. And unfortunately my time is a little bit tight today. But let's have a look tomorrow. Tomorrow I've actually got a little bit longer. So what I'll do tomorrow is, if I need to, I'll look at maybe finishing a little bit later. But to be honest with you, I think we've achieved more in 55 minutes today than we did in just over an hour yesterday. I don't know if you would agree. So tomorrow's stream is going to be the same time as today, which is 12 o'clock UK time. It's been scheduled for 1 hour, but the reason, to be honest with you, most of the time is I say an hour is because it can go over. So once I've finished this stream, it will then go up onto YouTube. I feel a little bit funny because obviously I'm recording this live at the time, but if you're watching it on YouTube, it's going to be recorded, and I feel a little bit odd. I don't know if you guys feel the same. So I'm talking in the now, in the past, in the future, if that makes sense. So does anyone have any preferences on who we're going to raid? I know we have our regulars, but the main reason we have the regulars is partly because there's doesn't tend to be that many people streaming. And then if you kind of eliminate the ones who aren't our favourites, then that doesn't normally give us so much choice, does it? Right, so I'm looking at Jimmy the Brush. Would you guys be happy? I actually do like Jimmy. Jimmy the Brush is one of my favourite streamers, but he's not often on when I'm on, which is probably why he's one of my favourite streamers, because I watch him more than I'm able to raid him. So guys, yeah, no, what I mean is, like, right now, this second, I'm talking to you live, but if someone is now watching this on YouTube, I'm not live, I'm as live, what I call as live. Listen, right, I'm going to hit the, I can waffle on for days, can't I? Right, so the raid is now in progress with Jimmy the Brush. Thank you so much for watching. Whether you're watching this on YouTube or Twitch, I really do appreciate your support. And hopefully, this is starting to look really good. This is potentially one of my best figures ever. And I'm really happy with that brown, even though that brown is on your base coat. I think that's really set itself off against the brown of the skin. So yeah, potentially some really good stuff going to come out of this. So take care,